I was talking about, where people are using this deck and they're feeling it and they're seeing it and they're working with it, and creating space for themselves to answer the questions and to look into their own well-being, you know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of Deck Creator Corner. Today is a really exciting episode because I will be interviewing another illustrator. This time I'll be talking to Amy Putney Koenig, the illustrator of the Prairie Majesty Oracle. She worked with Kara Simons, who I also interviewed on this series a couple weeks ago. I think it was episode 9. So if you want to check out the interview with Kara, go ahead and make sure you watch that replay. Amy just joined in, so let me see if I can invite her.
Hi, Johnny.
It's good. I'm glad that we're finally here together, Amy. This is so great. From the beginning, I've really wanted to just have these one-on-one conversations with illustrators to kind of get their version of the stories and see like how they kind of stumbled upon the work of illustrating a tarot deck. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and kind of chat with you about that. But before we get into that, if it's okay with you, I would just like to do a quick sound healing and cleansing of the space. Okay, cool. So for those who are joining us, awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. For those joining us, thank you so much for being here, and you're also welcome to join us in this. All you have to do to participate is just take a couple of deep breaths as I shake the maraca, and then we will get into this lovely conversation. I see Kara's here. Hey. Okay. Yeah, just a couple, just 2 or 3 deep breaths at your own pace while I do the maraca. Thank you. Thank you for participating in that with me. That was lovely.
Yes, I was going to mention that too, and that just shows that I haven't watched enough of your videos to, like, I was like, oh, maybe there's a moment where we ask people to just like take a second to arrive in the space, because it's so easy to come rushing, especially, you know, when you're the one doing the talking. Yeah. So thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you asking and your interest in the illustrators, you know.
So I wanted to just start this conversation, Amy, with some space to your name, what your pronouns are, maybe some of your aspirations, some of your work, and so just a quick introduction to who Amy Putney is, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. My name's Amy Putney. As an artist, I'm Amy Putney Koenig. As an artist and a married person, she, her are my pronouns, and I feel like I've been an artist all my life. I live in Des Moines, Iowa with Kara. We're in the Midwest. It's beautiful. The seasons are intense and it's hot and humid here, and I love it. And I what do I do? I feel like I've been drawing the same way as an artist since I was a kid. Like, I recently found these little drawings, and my mom passed away in 2018, and in her room there was a drawer full of letters that I had written her, like telling her to come and say goodnight to me, because she would go out at night, and then I'd say, come say goodnight, and they all had stars and moons and little symbols and animals. And it's this bizarre thing where I've been doing the same stuff all my life, and I'm grateful for that. There's a minute where I thought, boy, you kind of suck. You could have done better at all of this stuff. But I feel pretty good about it. I'm 52 years old. But I was talking about, you know, myself and my art, and I was talking about the split personality in my work, in that half of it is that young, you know, stuff from my youth, I feel like, with the suns and the moons and the symbolism, and it's bright and empowering and colorful. And I try to talk to the viewer and or kind of just be that sneaky way of like, if it's a big mural, like people see it when they're walking by, like that little transformation in a day with whether it's a color or it's a message. Um, and then the other part is, these dark collages where I used to use found objects and papers and, um, bits and pieces of bones and animals and dead things, wings and feet and feathers and all kinds of stuff because that was so beautiful to me. And so um, I've come to it. I used to think I needed to pick one or the other. I had some hangups with the bright, colorful art, much like I've done for the deck being like not cool or something, or people weren't going to know that I'm really unapproachable or I'm really a darkness person. But it's all such bullshit. It's like the stories we tell ourselves about even coming on to tell our stories about like, so who are you? And it's like, today, this is who I am. And this is how it's going. Yes. Yes. And, yeah, so I'm just here making art, living my life, and I have a studio. I have pets, a couple kids, and just grateful to be here. Recovery from addiction is a little bit a part of my story. Death is a part of my story. A part of the stuff I like to talk about and bring to the light, because oftentimes, those are death. We're getting better as a society at looking at that, but I just try to remind people it's like being born. I'm a hospice volunteer. I go into nursing homes and visit with people, and I'm a busybody, motor mouth busybody artist.
Yeah, no, that's so amazing, Amy, because I just feel like I've been so blessed with all of these conversations because I'm getting to interact with so many people who are just living in their like fullest authenticity, like, and like I can see that through you, like you're just really, like you said, it's been something that's been calling to you since you were a child, and you've really decided to say, you know what, like I'm gonna make this part of my life. And like a lot of people have this belief where like work has to be like this horrible, like you're supposed to hate your job kind of thing, and you're supposed to just want to come back home and not like it. And so it's really inspiring to see like people actually following it, and especially as an artist where it can be hard, in
Yeah,
this day and age to
yeah,
be an artist.
because we have the perception or the programming that the 40-hour grind is the thing that we're supposed to be doing it. They try to take the artist out of like, well, the age old silly stereotypes, but I think the world has really changed in the past 10, 20 years with the internet as far as artists goes, and just making it, like making the work. And I have been terrible for the longest time as um, charging the right amount for my money or for my artwork, charging the right amount of money for it, and showing up for myself in the right way, and getting like this project has been so cool because I feel like I was the kind of artist that like I wanted you to see my work, but I didn't want you to know who I am. Or
Mhm.
I wouldn't go to the openings, or I would, go to the show, but I wanted to be a mystery. Like it's that we call it sometimes in recovery an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. Like I want you to love me, but oh my God, don't touch me. Like just this
Yeah.
wild thing. And so it's taken some recovery and some self searching, because I think the recovery thing just means that we don't know how to live, and we don't know how to love ourselves, and we don't know how to be present. And when we are artists or writers or people that want to go work that grind, like they want to have their life and they're going to go do that job that's just really menial, and because they want to get it done, and it is this thing of like, how are we showing up for the world? Like that joy comes world doing for you. How are you showing up? How are you kicking ass and making your offering, making your magic, making your witchery, making your, whether it's the way you walk, the way you cook, the way you sing, the way you think, the way you grow things. It's just, it changes when we are reminded that it's not, that life isn't happening to us, that we're participating in it, and the best ways we can do that.
So amazing, and it just solidifies, and I feel like it comes through in the art that you're talking about, like all of your philosophies and all of your ways of living, like, and I feel like especially with the PMO, with the Prairie Majesty Oracle, I feel that the art really brings this like element to the questions, and it brings this element, and I love that there's like a diversity in like the elements and the symbols that exist within the deck. And so like I really feel like it really does reflect that, what you were saying, where it's like with your art, you know, like you want to reflect like the truths of life and our realities and like the deep feelings in people's, and I feel like it really reflects in your artwork. And so that really kind of got me interested in like, I know you said you've had this art style kind of like ever since you were a child. So did you ever go to like school, or are you a self-taught artist? Like what's your like education background?
So I went to Iowa State University for art and design, and I have a degree in fine arts and visual studies. And the emphasis is painting and computer art and fiber art, because I used to make hats like crazy and use found fabrics, you know, couches and dresses and vintage things, and make lots
Cool.
and lots of hats. It was so fun, and I would just sell them. I'd have bags of them and sell them. And college was really cool for me, but it was a funny thing, because in the end, I feel like I went in with some arrogance, and like I was so solid in who I was and my style, and this is me, and you can't change me. I mean, I wasn't rude about it, but I was like, I have these ideas, and let me do it this way, and they let me do it those ways. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, like I didn't really get much out of that. No one really challenged me to do much different. And so I'm doing work the same way. And in the college was, you know, I'm super fortunate that it was a gift that somebody paid for me. And, but it was a great time to learn some independence and to, you know, I did the life drawing classes. We had computer art, which was ridiculous because computers were so new that the web pages looked like little black and white recipe cards. It was crazy. And I still couldn't handle making computer art. I would make like analog art and then scan it and then call it computer art. Excuse me. So, I mean, I made a lot of great connections and friends there, and got to grow as a person. And the I got a job as an artist shortly after college from a person that was a professor at Iowa State, who started her own business. It's like a folk art inspired furniture business. And there was like 10 people working there when I got there. And so I got out of college. I traveled a little bit. I was selling lots of hats, and we had terrible floods here in 1993. And so I went on the road with a rock and roll band and saw the world. You know, I had a bag of potatoes, and I mean, I won't say the world. I saw the west of America, of the United States,
Yeah.
um, and you know, learned a lot there. Sold a lot of hats, and again, you know, was approached by this little bit of arrogance, because some galleries in New Mexico were like, "Hey, can you make hats and use this color palette?" And I was like, this is found fabric. How could I use a color palette? You know, how can I like bow to find your color palettes you want? And of course, like 6 months later, I was like, oh my gosh, they wanted your work and you're such a jerk, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, wild.
So that's
But
a really so that Yeah, so that's really awesome. And it's interesting too how things have changed, right? Like in terms of what you learned when you were in college and like how like computer art works now.
oh yeah,
um
right. Yeah.
you know, it's like totally different. And so the medium that you used for this, what did you use for the Prairie Majesty cards?
Well, I was reluctantly sort of given because I was so old school before this. Like I would draw on paper and draw in sketchbooks for like logo designs and for artwork and for prints and posters. Like I would draw and then paint or draw and just use pen and shading and then have it scanned, and then you have to have it converted, like just the old school way. And I could not deal with just computer art, but I was given an iPad and an iPencil, and I was reluctant. And what I realized I could do was do my sketches in the sketchbook and take pictures of my sketches, because I couldn't get the iPencil to just get it right, you know, to get that, you know, when you're an artist,
Yeah.
you're kind of intense about the quality of line in every little corner and how it feels. I don't want it too soft. I don't want it too hard. And that really, that really let me grow with the iPad, and it also made it a lot easier to do the t-shirt designs and logo requests without the multiple layers. And the
Yes.
entirety of this deck is on an iPad, and there's photographs included, like photographs of sunsets that I took myself or that Kara had taken. I love that the heal card, which is the purple cone flower, like was a flower that I had grown because I never had much time to grow flowers, but I had grown that and took a photo of it and just traced it because it meant so much to me to have that grown in my own yard, you know, that one. Yeah. So good. Um,
Flower is a flower that grew in your yard and you took a picture of
yeah.
it and traced it.
Yep, I did because I just love those petals, and it really like that's a little element of that magic that can go in there because I can draw flowers all day long, but capturing this one particular flower that after a few years of, you know, just planting flowers here and there, like it came, they're hardy and great, and they come up, and it just meant a lot to me because it was pandemic time, right? So I'm in the yard messing around all day, half the time, and drawing for Kara. It was so great. It's so good.
That's
What a
so
gift to be able
amazing.
to. Yeah.
So amazing. And I love that. And I love that like it kind of pushed you out of your comfort zone, huh? Like having to like do this digital. It was almost like, oh wait, I gotta change up how I've been doing things a little bit.
It was a great way to like fast forward into some production, you know, because it was on occasion I would use it and I would use it for work. And then it was like, okay, because, you know, I wanted it to be me. I wanted it to be attached to the project. It's such a cool project. And it felt like something that she was asking me to do, because it's easy when clients come to you for artwork, but they don't really know you. They don't really want you to be a part of it. They just know that it's like when someone will ask me you do a realistic family portrait. And it's like, that's not what I do. But she meant for me to be a part of this. She was coming for me as an artist, and I wanted it to be me and participate that way. So it was a great way to ramp up the speed. And it's funny to me now to think that it was basically a card a day, sometimes 2 cards a day. Some were easier than others. Like she would send these great descriptions as the animals and plants would come to her, and then I would read them and get a feel for it and just put it out there.
Amazing. So like and with Oracle and Tarot and stuff, like, did you ever expect that that would be part of your artistic like life and work? Like, did you ever think that you'd work on the tarot? Like, do you have history with Oracle or Tarot? Or was this kind of your first introduction into that?
I'd had a lot of people say that I should do a tarot deck for years, and you should, you know, they just see the symbolism. And you know, feel like I come from a little bit of mysticism in my background with my mother and her kind of intensity with animals and dreams and kind of her way of being. And in the 90s, I lived in this beautiful coven called the Temple of the Goddess, and there were lots of readings and tarot there, but it never touched me in the sense that but I loved having readings done, but I did not, it didn't click in as something like I have to do this. But through the years, people would say, um, you should design this. But what's great too is I didn't even get what an oracle deck was until I looked more into it. Like it's obvious, it's a question, it's asking a question. It's like a part of that. I was like, maybe that oracle is just like for tarot that's not quite tarot. And so I learned a lot through this too.
And so the other illustrator that I interviewed, her name is Celia. She was of the Way of the Panda Tarot. She had similar experience to where like there had been like a little bit of exposure, like she knew what tarot was, and maybe she had gotten a few readings or something in the past, but really she learned a lot of what she knows now through that process of making that tarot deck, or in this case, an oracle deck. And so I think that's really beautiful too, because it's like the perfect introduction into this like magical community that
Mhm.
exists that's like hidden. It's like a hidden little gem that you just don't know about until you're in the community, you know? And it's like
Yeah.
the same thing for me where I started this account in 2020. Well, before, but like I really started working on it and you wanting to be part of a business in 2020. And I had no idea like what I would be getting into and like the people that I'd be meeting and like the connections that I'd be making. And so like, yeah, it's really exciting to see more people coming into this. And I had this conversation with viewers. And it's about how like that we need like more diversity in spiritual imagery nowadays.
Mhm.
And so the more artists that we have contributing to the plethora of different spiritual imagery that we can have, because it's not just tarot or oracle decks, like it's just artwork in general, that like is lacking in that kind of that spiritual, that depth that you were talking about. And
Yeah.
so, even within Oracle decks, very seldom do I come across an Oracle deck, at least for me and like in my practice, that I can go so deep with, both in the imagery and with the prompts and the questions. And so, like, I feel that it's really awesome that it's tell that you don't have previous Oracle or Tarot experience, because it seems like it just came so organically and naturally. And I think that maybe that's part of that beautiful relationship that you've been able to cultivate with.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So I want to ask a little bit about that. What's your side of the story? How did it come into your world? This working with Kara.
well, first of all, I love that you brought that up because we were really mindful of that, of not wanting to be like, I'm really, I was been a yoga teacher, and I was really hung up on not want, and I always come from a little underbelly of like, I am working to teach the people that don't want to go into the yoga studio. I want to be at the bookstore or at, any place, the treatment center, the women's prison, at a place where it's not just your typical yoga studio. I want to reach the people that aren't those people because of, I'm annoyed with the spiritual white woman, like fuck that bitch. If I can say it like that.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not trying to be that way. And so, Kara did initially, because we even making a deck about animals and making a deck, an oracle deck in itself, like we were mindful of that. So I really appreciate you acknowledging that and you feeling the depth and weight of the incredible writing of this deck. I think it's so direct and strong, yet gentle in just the perfect way. And so I had been teaching yoga at a community space, which is awesome. It's called Good Vibes Yoga, and I painted murals all throughout the place and done some design for him. His name is Ben Spellman. He's a great guy that's trying to change the look of yoga and bring it into a neighborhood where he wants more people, more diversity, people to get the benefits of the practice. And there was an event there, and Kara apparently went to that event and was doing readings, and I had never met her. And I'm a little bit I'm a little bit, what is the word? It's not introverted or antisocial, but I don't get to a lot of events. I would teach a lot of events and participate and offer events, but then it's kind of like I also don't make it to a ton of art shows. So that's been on a list of things to do to get to more events, to support more of people that are doing these things. But she called me and said, someone gave me your name as to maybe be someone to work with this. So can we meet and talk about it? And I was like, of course, I'd love to. This is perfect. And we met at a restaurant, and it just felt good and warm, because a lot of times I got the opportunity to speak with her today, and it was so great to see her, because there's that moment of like, yeah, we're going to have this meeting like any other meeting, and we're going to talk, and then I won't hear from her again, because a lot of projects go that way, or however that goes. Not a lot, but it's a big undertaking. But I loved her energy, and we had this wild kind of connection with the word sovereign, and I think we have talked about it a lot, and it's even in the book, where I have animals in my dreams. Like I can dream, and there's deer and an octopus and a bear, and I've held lion cubs, and a cheetah shows up. Like I have more animals in my dreams than people, or the part that I remember. I'm not very I'm not as lucid as some people or whatever. And she I was talking about the dream. I don't know which came first, but it lined up that I had been in this dream, like at the same big warehouse I go to all the time, and there'll be like animals, or there'll be signs or billboards or post-it notes up on the wall that are trying to get me to read a word or trying to get me to read a phrase, and I can never understand the language, and it's frustrating. And finally, I lifted up a post-it note, and the word was sovereign in the dream. And I was like, oh, interesting, sovereign. I had to look it up, because I was like, I know this word, but when you know, when you think you don't know, or you think you know. And I was like, oh, that's a good word, sovereign. Like, and it felt like a good place where I was in my practice, in my life as well. Like
Mm.
with the altar, with the movement, with meditation, and with my artwork, like just taking a little more sovereignty and ownership, and not, you hear the owls are going off over here. Um,
And yeah.
yeah. And she said, oh my gosh, let's explore your sovereign nature. And I was like, boom, that was so cool. It was such a great connection. And we kind of took it from there, you know, and I loved so much that I think it was stink bug was the first, but animals like worm and snake and vulture, all the basics, all the, not even the basics, but it was the animals that came to her, that wanted to be heard, that wanted their energy and kind of their ways of being to be incorporated in the card, were not all fluffy, you know. Like I love so much that it's snake or worm, like one of them, it's like, how am I bigger than any fear, you know. And oh, that's beautiful. And breathe, and the earthworm, it's just so, it's beautiful stuff.
That's the prairie king snake. How can I know myself as bigger than any fear?
Yeah, I love it so much, because people get, people, you know, people either love or hate snakes, right? They either get it or don't. And to have the snake be the one that is coming off as being afraid, or being, you know, how can I know myself as bigger than any fear? I think that is such a layered, heavy, beautiful question, because we have so many layers, and we can think we're living this thing like, oh, I'm loving wholeheartedly, and then oh, there's a layer of fear over that, you know, and everything. And it was such a cool process. I was thinking of it today, how, and I listened to your interview. I don't know how I missed it that time, but that the process of her going through and us going through, like, you cannot transmit what you don't have, right? You can't transmit what you don't have. And it's the same in like a recovery community, or, you know, a healing community. And even healing is a little bit of a funny word, because my perspective is that we are all equipped with these incredible bodies that are set to heal. They're pushing out the stress. They're pushing out. We just get so accustomed to looking outward for people to do it for us, right? Do it for us. And to, man, I lost it when I got there. But we're all designed to do that, and to be able to inspire each other, like to be able to inspire with animals and plants, that the words, the language, to look at that in a different way. Like I just think it's perfect for an oracle deck. I forget quite where I was going, but it's that same kind of line of um, having this tool that you can do your independent work. You can be a part of a community and do the work. You can be, you don't have to be, you know, what do we call it these days? A friend of mine calls it it's like a happy meal for witches, the McWitch, where it's like everybody's on board to get this thing. If I have the look, if I have the thing, then I'm really doing the thing. And I come from a line of those who know don't tell, those who tell don't know. And it is growing so beautifully and amazingly. It's not to discount, but it's to that reminder that we are empowered. You have the magic within you, and to use these animals and plants, and just even the questions, you know, it's brilliant. Her writing.
Like I said, like I don't usually connect a lot with Oracle decks. I use them every now and then, and I kind of fill the spaces in a little bit, especially with readings that kind of need a little bit more like fleshing out and stuff. But like I'm not super like Oracle deck oriented, but like this one, I'm like, this one's different, you know? And it's just because there's so many different ways that you can go. Like for example, this whole conversation that we're having was just sparked by the question, but you could focus on the verb and not even look at the question, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like bam, a whole other conversation about what shedding means and how we can do that in our lives, and how that relates to fear, and like all the different things that you can get from it. And so kind of leads me a little bit into my next question, is like, what is it like to manifest somebody else's vision, right? Like how was that process for you as an
Oh,
illustrator to, you know, work with Kara in that way?
best collaboration I've ever been a part of, you know, because it was, um, trust was such a thing. Like I kept waiting for something to happen for her to say, this isn't right, or that's not right, or actually, never mind, you know, because I come from trust issues, and to feel so held, and so like I kept waiting for the pressure. I kept waiting for the to be frustrated with it. I kept waiting to roll my eyes at it, or I kept waiting for it to be a hassle, and it was never that. And not that other projects are, but sometimes it's easy to get yourself in a project and be like, what have I done? You know, like this is too much, or this is, or that thing that I said where people, you realize people didn't really come to you for your art. They came for you because you're an artist. And this was the most gentle, and I mean, just, it felt like I said, one of us or both of us were going through, it would obviously be her as the lead, but like whatever the card was teaching, she had to learn it. You can't, that back to that, you can't transmit what you don't have. She had to go through it before the card would be ready to be written. And to take that into my own hands was really amazing. And so it's been an incredible project to work on, just because of, there was so much trust there, like this incredible alchemy of just knowing that it's going to be okay, whatever's going to happen. You know, we would question occasionally, what do you think of this, or what do you think of this? But it was mostly like I would do it and I would send it over, and she would send over more cards and I would send them over. Some cards were harder than others. You know, like it's called the 13 lined ground squirrel. I call it a chipmunk, but the 13 lined ground squirrel, man alive, I don't know, that little guy took forever to get right. And then other cards that I expected to be difficult, like beaver, just showed up. Beaver was ready. And that ground squirrel, or that yeah, that fancy background, like this soft, kind of almost impressionistic multicolor background for that guy was just so fascinating. And the clover that's there, it was like some, it just, and it I can say that it doesn't look like much sometimes, but every little tick of the line meant something to me in that. And there's tiny little symbols around many of the cards that may look just like symbols, but sometimes it's hoof prints or paw prints, or obviously they all have reference to the earth, air, sky, water, or planetary symbols. And yeah, it's good. It was brilliant working with her. And she is an incredible, she's so real, and in the sense, that sounds funny to say, but you know, I've worked with a lot of people that will be, you know, if I'm working an event and we're doing multiple things, that the person will be who they are at the event, and then when they're done, it's like, oh, glad that's over, you know, or something like that, where she's just so, I've learned a lot from her about trust, about sticking to it, about love, about acceptance, and just things you wouldn't think you would learn from a collaborator, but like, oh, I am the one with the problem. I am the one being afraid. I am the one with the expectation that it's not going to go well. So that part's been cool.
Awesome, and I think that it's a big relief for a lot of us who want to make a tarot deck, but we're not necessarily the artist, and so we want to like work with an illustrator to
Yeah.
manifest our vision. And a big fear, at least for me, is like me not being able to communicate or say whatever it needs to be said for my vision to be manifested by somebody else that isn't me. That for me is like, I don't know why that's such a big like source of anxiety for me. But it is, you know, and so, but what I've heard from almost every, I mean, actually from every single person is that like, if you're like, if making a deck is like meant for you and it's like on your path, you're going to find the illustrator that's going to like fit perfectly with what you need.
Right.
And it's not going to be difficult. And like you said, it's not, because we're working on a magical tool. So
Yeah.
there's magic involved. It's not just like a regular artistic endeavor, you know, there's magic involved. And so like that's gonna, like, if you're going to like find and attract and harmonize with the artist that you need for your project. So
Exactly.
it's so amazing to hear like the processes. And also it's relationship that you hold for each other, both personally and publicly. And I say that because nowadays there's still a lot of new decks that are being illustrated by somebody else. And the person who creates the deck is like the head front of the deck, and like the illustrator is like hidden, like in a little corner of the box. And that totally, for me, it gives me like Pamela Coleman Smith vibes, where they're just trying to erase
Oh
the
yeah. Oh
artist.
yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember when I messaged you about
Oh
interviewing you,
yeah.
you're like, "Oh, I don't know, like Amy, Kara should be here too." And I was like, "This is so amazing! Like, who would say that? Like, you
Yeah.
know, for the most part, people would just be like, "Yeah, I'll interview." Like no worries. But like, there's even in Kara as well. Like, there was always this like idea that it's, even though Kara, like, I guess was the lead, like you said, and she was doing all of the things and giving you the examples, it really was a co-creation.
It was, yeah. I feel that way too. But I've been perfectly willing to like, I so get it. And if I have been times like I just made the art, like I'm just doing the thing. I'm just doing what you're saying. Because I suppose like anybody, when it's easy for us, then or kind of easy for us, then it feels like. I mean, it really felt like she has done the work, but I do honor and will take the credit for my contribution because it comes from a long, like it comes from a lot of practice. And I think even with songwriters, like sometimes the songwriter is the writer of the songs, but they don't want to be the one that's out in front of people. We have those kind of roles in that thing, but and she has always like, I was willing to be the one in the corner, like just the little one that's there that does that. Cause that is the nature of kind of the business, and it is her thing, but it is beautiful to have that relationship. I've had moments of like, oh, okay, she really wants us in this together, and I'm here for it. I'm definitely here for it. And you wouldn't have one without the other at this point, which is cool.
Agree, and it's good to see it that way too. Like I appreciate the perspective because, especially like, you like what they want in a way. I remember I messaged one of the other illustrators for one of the deck creators that I interviewed, and she was like, "No, I don't want to be interviewed. Like, I'm good where I am.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the spotlight, and it doesn't bother me at all." And so that was also eye opening for me
Yeah.
because like here I am like trying to force like Illustrator into the spotlight,
Yeah.
and some of them are just like, listen, I don't, that's not what I want. And so it's been interesting to kind of engage in that way and see like, oh, maybe this isn't always like a negative thing to where
Right.
like it's being relegated to like, the corner of the box, which is fine
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. It is.
Um,
I think it's great to question it. I think it's great to that you're searching and seeking and asking about it because it's something that you're thinking about and it's something that is out there. Like sometimes it is that, and you either get the collaboration or you get the person that illustrates your words. And the collaboration is a little bit different as far as the energy of what is bringing and then what that deck will be offering, I think, aside from just the illustrator. I'm working on another deck, or I'm not. I should. I did one card for another deck that's a group illustrated deck, and it's been interesting to watch that unfold because it's taking so long, and all the other artists are just. But it's an interesting thing. Like I can look at my card that I did, and it's really simple and different because I wanted it to be simple and different, and that's a little bit why. There's so many incredibly beautifully illustrated decks out there of all kinds, like the incredible animal decks that are wonderful. And I have a simple, funky, kid-like kind of line style that I like, and I thought it would give it more uniqueness. Yeah, black and white, to have the animal be in black and white with a little halo of yellow and then the color be in the background. Like that's a great picture from a field of, oh, I forget what they're called, these beautiful little flowers. And because that butterfly is so notorious as the butterfly, right? The beautiful swallowtail, like that's something you can picture in your mind. And when you see it here, not colored in, you're filling in the pictures and you're also filling in the card and the question.
like actually consciously noticed that they're in black and white.
Yeah. because you're filling in the color. Isn't that wild?
Black and white.
Yeah.
Crazy. I never really noticed that.
Yeah.
And now, because you said that, and I was
Yeah.
like, wait, hold on. I was like, wait, hold on. And I'm looking at them all. I was like, oh my gosh, they're all black and white. I can't believe.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. Like your brain, like puts the colors in.
Yeah. But it's just a way to kind of highlight what the card is about, who is on the card, and also know your brain's going to fill that color in, or it's either going to make it stand out, like that's what I'm talking about. Because sometimes even I look at a card and I don't know what I'm looking at. Like I know in a tarot deck that I'm looking for specific symbols, and you know that has this great symbology behind it that is heavy and unique and multi-layered. But I can look at an oracle and just see beautiful art and not know what I'm looking at. And I think with the language and the word and the question, or the question and the verb and the image, then it brings it into it. I think it seems to be working to get to the point, like boom, just like the question does. Like, let me go right here, right now.
Yes, totally. And like I said, like for people like me, I mean, like I've been working with this deck since I got it, and try to find like all the little symbols and all the little things, and like I'm still shocked that I did not realize that all of the
Yeah.
the animals were in black and white.
I see my
That's really
friend Joanna
awesome.
Ebenstein is here, and I love that so much. She's amazing. Joanna Ebenstein of Morbid Anatomy. If you don't know Morbid Anatomy, you got to look it up. They have beautiful classes on tarot and um, death oriented medical
I
history and
will
all.
definitely check them out. I will definitely check them out. So, Amy, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask some, like, I guess, Illustrator questions. Um, we talked a little bit about some of your challenging cards. You said the squirrel, right?
Yeah. 13 lined ground squirrel.
I'm wondering if you had any other challenging cards that you wanted to share that you can remember.
All laid out in the studio, and I'm afraid if I go in there, I'm going to lose our connection. Let me think here. Stink bug was so fun. He was there. Ferret was there. It's cute. You know, some of the plants, like that compass plant you just showed, and also bergamot, because the plants are pretty, like, trying to convey them without being, because they're
Mm,
complex plants, and not wanting them to get too real. Keeping that stylized version of the plant was good. And I'm sure there was another animal that gave me grief. Bergamot came out beautifully. Like at first, I was like, "You're a complex, complicated creature," and it worked out really good. That's good. That one was a little tricky. The compass plant is fascinating because it looks just kind of like a stack of daisies, but there's more to it than that. Big blue stem, just because it's big blue stem, it's big tall grass. Maybe it was more of the plants that gave me a little more difficulty than the animals, because I feel like I draw animals a lot.
sense. So yeah. So which ones? Just off the top of your head, we don't have to go through a lot of them, but which ones were some of your favorites to illustrate?
Vulture, all the way. Vulture is one of my animals from the beginning.
Okay, Amy, that's so weird because when you were talking about um, uh, the cards that were difficult for you, I was looking through them and I pulled out the turkey vulture card, and I
Yeah.
was like, this looks like it could have been like it could have taken her a while, but it seems so. I don't know. I just something told me to pull it out, and I was literally
Yeah.
looking at it as you said it.
I love that. That's so good. He needed a little more attention, but it unfolded beautifully. Like I love that. I see them flying around all the time here, and that silhouette on the top, like it's not something I would normally combine, but I think it
Mm,
conveys turkey vultures so well. They're wild, beautiful creatures, and I love vultures, the scavengers. I love monstrous animals that have been kind of pegged as, when they're monstrous, then we think they're of the devil, or they're dark, or they're evil, and they're amazing. Those are. And so that one was really fun to do, and that little tiny, like it's almost like a little blurb of ink on the top that turn into that silhouette so perfectly for me, and then adding, kind of refining it and adding the white line. Um, Mountain lion was so fun. Cats are kind of part of my lifelong symbolism thing. So to get it right meant a lot to me. To have, just such a few lines be able to convey mountain lion rather than it being too cute of a cat. And some people are like, he's cute, he's cute. I'm going to say it. I guess I have to say it. He's cute.
He's definitely cute, but I think when you put him in the context of the card and you see the verb down here, stalk, it changes from looking cute to then it's almost like, oh, he's stalking me. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's
What are you stalking? Like, what are you working toward? It's so good.
that's why I loved it because it's cute, but then the gaze is pretty intense. Like when you look at it and you do some like just path working with the card and you interact with the image and you see this in person or in your mind's eye, I guess. Um, it's like the gaze is very penetrating. I can't remember right now exactly what what I pulled this card for, but I remember working with this card and I was like, this is an intense card.
Yeah, yeah. It's so good. Cottonwood was really sweet. The glitter.
Really beautiful. I couldn't picture it in my mind, but now that I saw it, I was like, yes, I love this card.
That's a great little photo of sunset. It's a sunset with this illustration on it's like super enlarged, tiny section of a brilliant sky. And I love that little ethereal element in there.
I'm trying to find, you said the badger, right?
Badger, yeah, badger.
Oh, I love this card. I think, isn't there a story behind this card? Was this like the first
Yes.
card or something?
That no, he was a little bit later on, but I had to add that crown just because the
Hmm.
whole defend thing, like we're showing up, for ourselves and for others, and keeping watch of that. And he was one that they're wild little creatures, but he was fun to work on. Beaver was amazing too. Beaver came out really easily. I was concerned about the beaver card, and that did really well. Um, Bee, I love insects. Ant, ant was a lot, but yeah, there he is. Yeah, getting that right was I love all those intricate little the mechanisms of the body, but making it look a way that it could still be recognizable. Yeah, yeah, and work, man, we're working.
I love having these opportunities because, like, for example, with that heal card, like now I get all these small little details in my mind and of the behind the scenes stories of all these different cards. And I feel like it really adds a dimension when you start um, with a deck. It really does make a difference to know these little intricacies and stuff. And so that's why I love the guidebook as well, because it really does give us a really good snippet of the relationship that you have with Kara. And it really does a great job at allowing us to connect to it through that lens. Um, so yeah, I wanted to ask you before we go into the final questions. This is, we touched on this a little bit, but how has illustrating this deck changed your life?
I think it's just been such a beautiful project to work on. The perseverance, the working through it, and being patient with it. Like I tend to rush through a lot of projects and go really fast and then get it over with, and then what's on to the next thing. And it's wild to be in the space we're at with it now, because it seems like it was just yesterday that we were starting the conversation, and to have it come all this way, and to see the response, and to see that thing I was talking about where people are using this deck and they're feeling it and they're seeing it and they're working with it, and creating space for themselves to answer the questions and to look into their own um, well-being, and their own strengths and the own places that they need to maybe focus and work and just do the day to day. So it's given me this way of working a little more patiently, giving things some time. Trust is a big deal, like just trusting that it's going to work out. Because I also, and I think a lot of artists do this, and a lot of people do this, like you get to a halfway point, like it's the halfway point when I want to bail. Like one thing, like if a mural is halfway finished and I'm like, this is ridiculous, I'm done, I'm not going to finish it. But it's because it's only halfway done, right? Like you have to finish it and follow through. And so just, it's been kind of changing to have this relationship with Kara, but and also know that these kind of projects are out there, in that sense of the collaboration and trusting that it's going to be okay to work with someone. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people, but it's just, I think we're always changing and evolving, and we just keep going and we keep growing. And it's just been, changing in the fact to see her work in connecting community. Because I would have done, like, I will do a huge project and then not tell anybody about it. And then I'm like mad that no one saw my project, which I'm working on eventually. But for her to reach so far into community and to spend so much time connecting and loving what other people are doing and watching what other people are doing. Like one of my mantras is let yourself be loved. And that is like, I have a tendency to push away, or especially when people are trying to love me. And I'm way past that now, but it's a great reminder of her perseverance and kindness, and talking to other people about their work, talking to other deck creators, talking to oracle creators. As you said, it's such a community. Who knew? And to have this global impact, to have these little drawings I did on my couch. I can't remember what I was watching, but something like Drag Race or something was just on the TV all the time, right? Like just because something that I can watch and enjoy without having to look up. But to have that have such a reach in the world, like when she kept telling me where it's going to, where it's sending to, I'm here having a conversation with you when I would have never connected with you had she not given me the opportunity, to that bravery to not pick and choose, or to not hide out all the time and then be mad that no one saw me. That's a big changing thing there too. Playing small. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that that's so beautiful because, like I said, this has been a common thread for a lot of people in this journey of deck creation, is that it's kind of like it forces you out of your comfort zone in many different ways, and it forces you to grow and evolve and like adapt to the new changes in your life. And I think it's really awesome that thing and an external thing, right? Like you're going through a
Yeah.
transformation as the artist, but
Yeah.
then once you do it and you put that work out, now it's doing that same thing for people across the globe, And I think that that's a really amazing thing. But I'm curious now, how long did it take you to fully illustrate the deck from when that first conversation happened to like, okay, we're done?
I feel like it took, so I feel like we met in late in the fall, and I didn't really even get started. I feel like it was about a year, like, because we had some things along the way. We kind of planned on working on it, and then we got to working on it, and then the writing started coming her way. And I think the whole process, so it was spring, it was kind of spring of 2020 that we started getting it out. I'm not good with timelines, but in that sense. But it came out, we did the Kickstarter in the fall. So it was kind of like spring to fall, 6 or 7 months, I think, to do the illustration. When it could have gone quicker, but I was learning the iPad and learning the layering. And, there's a lot of heavy, ridiculous, like, do your research. If you're making a deck, do your research, because, who knew that there were 17 kinds of black ink? The printer wants one exact specific black. And if you don't get that right, and the right format and the right size and the right template, like, so I had a template, but of course it was later that I was like, you could have used the same template for every card. And I drew a new template for every card rather than using the same one, which I kind of love. But you know, just that those little details like that took time. And she had some background in a little graphic design, and her attorney background is incredible with that as well. So I was gifted this incredible collaborator to work with that knew all this stuff and was able to put little tweaks, like all the, you know, just to make the colors right. So I think it was like 7, 8 months as far as the drawing goes. Oh yeah, yes, the CMYK, RGB trauma, baby. Somebody commented that. Yeah, that's when I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, bye. I
Yeah,
tried, no
see, like,
more.
so that's the worry for me too, you know, the logistics and stuff. Like, that's what everybody has said. And I remember specifically, I interviewed Stephanie of the Chromatic Fates Tarot, where she got one artist for every single deck, or for every single card, I'm sorry. And so there, and it ended up being like 81 artists. And so now she's like sending like, you know, legal forms for them to fill out and doing all these logistic stuff behind the scenes. And she's like, I didn't know this was going to be this crazy, you know, like, and
Yes,
so like a lot of
yes.
people think that the hard part is getting the cards and drawing them out. But really, it's like all the other crap, like the printing and finding all of that.
Having them be the right format is like everything. Like who knew, like a little bit off here and there. And because I have learned to be specific in my layers, but I don't get it every time. Like I didn't even know there were layers when I first started using Procreate. Like, oh, I can do a whole layer of the outline of the template, and then another layer of color and another layer of background. But I had no idea before. I would erase stuff that I could have just clicked the layer away, you know. But it's like you got to learn, you got to do the work sometimes. Yeah,
It's
that's why that community is so awesome. Like because she did research with the community, she talked to people, she had people that had gone through a really difficult time, or really what could have been a really what's it called when you just get your deflating kind of time, and share that experience so others don't have to do that. And that is so great. It's not a competitive, like I'm gonna, it's out for me. It's very much a sharing and connecting, and how do we learn from each other community, which is amazing.
it's honestly part of like what inspired me to do this series, because like I want to create a deck, but like I felt like even just like reading stuff and like reaching out to people and talking online, like that just felt like so much, like I just felt didn't know where to start, you know. I was like, what am I supposed to do, like how do I do this? And so really it started because I was interviewing Brianna of the Wild Wolf Tarot, and she had it illustrated by somebody else. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I can do. Because I was over here thinking like, man, I'm going to have to learn how to draw, and I'm going to have to learn how to do all this stuff because I don't know how to do it. Like, I guess I didn't think to like work with an illustrator. So when I, you know, got the deck from Brianna and I decided to interview her. I was like, this is perfect because she went through what I want to go through, which is working with an illustrator. And so then I was like, this is perfect. I can, you know, have these interviews, and then that way there's like a whole series for somebody who wants to, if somebody wants to learn how to make decks, like pick an interview to watch
Yeah, yeah.
and see what advice you'll find in that interview, you know. And that's what I think for me has been so gratifying, is that I get all this amazing advice and support from people who've already done the process. And that makes me feel so much more confident going forward with my own deck creation journey.
That's amazing, right? That's exactly how it goes. Like if I were just to be my quiet old self and just working and not sharing with anybody, and then have my ass thoroughly kicked by the printer and bleed lines and all that stuff,
Yep.
and be like, oh, I see. Yeah,
So it's interesting to see like even the experienced deck creators how they struggle, you know, and it's
yeah.
like, wait, what's going on? But yeah, that's so beautiful to see how it's changed your life and how it's really made a global impact, right? Like that's so amazing. Now I would like to kind of start wrapping up our conversation a bit, and I wanted to ask you where we can find you, how we can support you, if there's any upcoming projects, yeah, any of that good stuff.
Awesome. It's been lovely to visit. I have a website. I'm amyputneykoenig.com, and I'm not super updated of it, but there is examples of some cool work.
Super nice, super clean.
Excuse me, sir. um, oh, so website, Instagram. There's I'm working on a book project that is very different than other projects. That is about two art shows that I put together on kind of letting go of family trauma. And and I've been kind of sitting on it and sitting on it and sitting on it. And it's like, oh, I just have to do the thing, because it's easy for me to think people are sick of hearing about that. People don't want to know about that. But it's a beautiful family. Well, like I say, just kind of this release of family trauma based on my mother, who passed away in 2018, and she exploded my heart in this incredible way when she passed away, and um, and kind of our history and her history of her sister's death. That her sister died. My mom was 20 years old when she died, and the child was 11 years old when she died, and it was just a crazy car accident. She could have been saved. It was a complicated story, but I've made a couple art shows on it that are installation art shows, and it's telling her story in a different way. The original, just telling her story about who she was, because she got really defined by her accident. So the original show was called The Art of Family Tragedy and How to Be Amazing Anyway, and it's based on collage about darkness that we inherit and stories we inherit. And my mom couldn't really be in fully in her life, because she was so she wanted to die most of her life, and that's part of why I got really interested in. I dig up the family dog and play with bones, um, and then she was able to be a part of that show and see that show. And then when she died, I did like a closing art installation on kind of closing out that family trauma, and I invited community to participate, to bring pieces to put in the fire, or pieces to contribute in a collage, and to see the art show, to kind of send it off, to I put my mom's ashes in the vault with her little sister that had passed away, and we had this whole kind of beautiful closure. Yeah, it was special. And I even got to open the coffin of the child, and it's and take photographs, because she was so prevalent in my life, but died the year before I was born. And so it's about celebrating her, and the beauty of releasing the story. Like, my family was so struck with wanting to be mad and resentful towards the other family that did not do what they needed to do to save this child, that my job became to let it go. Let it go. And I feel like I did not, it's not out there a lot publicly on social media or even on my website. There's a video on my website on the Shapeshifter, the Art of Family Tragedy page. But I think it's worthy of being in a book, and it's neat stuff to look at and to share. But I was feeling funny about it, because I had the show, we've had the stuff, and so it's done. So shouldn't you be done with it? And it's like, I'm done with it, but let's talk about it. Let's put it out there. Kind of working on that. What else am I working on? I got a little show coming up, and just actually I'm in the midst of reworking my studio, because it's just gotten too small. It's too small. I mean, it's great. I just need to rearrange. So what do we call that? Housekeeping.
Yes.
Studio, letting go, shedding. Yeah. But thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, of course. Like, this was amazing. I did want to ask you though, really quickly, about upcoming projects. You mentioned that you made a card for a tarot deck.
Yeah. And so Lila Sparrow is the person that asked me to make. Lila Sparrow is her name, and I believe she's on Instagram, and it's a Toth deck. Do I say that right? And a person named Lion is the one. So I keep keeping an eye out from a distance, because they're having a different artist for each card, and you see the new art come in, and they're like, did you use the bleed lines? What bleed lines? The bleed lines that were sent to you to do the art with. Oh, I don't do art like that. Or I just was going to let it adjust. And like, I'm just watching like, oh,
Yeah.
and send it with the best love and getting itself
Yeah.
together energy that I can. So Lila Sparrow, you'll find her on Instagram, and I think she might talk about it. And Lion is his name. I can't remember, but I'll send you a link if you're interested because I think it's going to be beautiful. It was supposed to be done in April, but they still have like 30 artists that haven't finished the art yet.
That's
So
really awesome. So we will
I'm
definitely
real
keep an
simple.
eye
I've
out.
sounded out. I'm real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll definitely keep an eye out for this new deck. I'm gonna link your website and all that stuff in the description below. Anybody here watching, if you don't have the Prairie Majesty Oracle, it is a beautifully illustrated deck. It's
Thank you, Johnny. I have the same way. It's good.
to be able to continue to support you in your work, Amy. I'm excited for this book. It sounds amazing, and so you said that maybe people are kind of tired of hearing that stuff, but I believe that diversity is key, right? And so I feel like if there's a story to be told, there are people who need to hear it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I feel um, like, especially as an artist, like that creativity to be expressed through other means as well, right? And so writing a book isn't something that like, oh, an artist, but at the same time, it's like that just goes to show like how spirit wants to express itself through you, So I'm
Yeah.
excited for your projects and really looking forward to what you have coming up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll keep you posted. I really appreciate the.
Everybody,
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye,
bye.
everybody.